Philosophizing as an art of direct engaging that has multitudes of avenues of multiplexity that immerses consciousness, particularly our direct consciousness, as a self inhabitor of our subjective experience, that as we emerge in what is present to us as objects and materials of things, and which in relation to the subject matter that on its ponderances of our wandering, as we primarily mind wander first and then tend to enter into these more mindful congruent states of thinking, and congruent thinking that validates functionalities in terms of its engaged thought in terms of what is concurrent in our experience, that's involving these occurrences that pertain to multiple processions of our direct experience that is emerging as we experience it, but also that has aspects in which are the same in prior and that stabilize our existence, and which characterize it to some degree but cannot capture its full complexity. And there's elegance to the self in that we don't really have to worry about all these other potential states all the time, and we can appreciate the patternicity within the subject matter that is consistent and the same, and forms what is not just a mere subjective structure, but a subjective functional structure with objective validity and girth to it. It's dynamical, it's deep in its mattering in a physical and a psychological sense. It's quite literally rooted in our being, and with root-like systems that pertain to the nervous system, the dendrites branching off in various directions, sending these pulse signals to the surroundings and detecting aspects of the environment which it comes to learn through the presence of consciousness objects in a particular distance, which has in its own internal modelings a fixed rate of association that positions a mental space in approximation to a physical surrounds. And ideally we would like that to be more calibrated in what closer approximates something that is more objective rather than less subjective, to actually keenly acute the finer details of what is true, and the information rather than a perception, and the perceptions that are preliminary, as in foremost, as in the original experience that is I, a subjective being with an essence dynamical and constantly in emotion. Not so much motion, but emotion. It's not so much that we are the same again as these atoms, but more closer to the automaton that is distinctive of atoms. But yet we share a common physical ancestor, and that is matter, that is all things. And there's spirituality to be found directly in that. And in fact, it's the primordial origin, source of spirituality. That is physicality and the dynamical, particularly the functionality of evolution that at some point in our material evolutionary history involving artifacts and relics of the past, and also these structures that embed the markings of early ancestors that show the emergence of these higher complex cognitive processes positioned within a specific time under specific conditions, that we come to learn and inform our own understandings of how we actually came to be, not just as singular individuals, but as entire species and individually different species, and as a particular civilization that is unique and has this individually different distinctive characteristic of the self that defines us as a species, and which no other animal or living thing has. And if we didn't have, we would lack civilization altogether through failing to understand other consciousness and thoughtful minds that are intelligent and capable of complex cognitive thinking and thoughtfulness in particular, that allows us to engage the world more meaningfully and enlightening ways that provide a direct benefit through the resource of knowledge and information that has been the primary mechanism of which our species has selected for, which is demonstrated in the large prefrontal cortexes that we have evolved, which is primarily dedicated to imaginative, creative, innovative problem solving with all these things and ways of thinking with things and interacting with them by molding and shaping and innovating in every possible way you can imagine, quite literally, and not just literally, directly and synthetically through that direct process, which allows us to tap into the indirect, pull on the imaginative strings, and start hitting chords that accord the mind to awakenings of great flights of consciousness at the blaze of glory, in which days of heaven light guide the wisest of minds to immortalizing greatness for not just the eye of conscious, but all individuals who come to exist and can truly appreciate the great works and beauty that has come from civilization, and particularly the ideation and admiration and inspiration from our ideals and grander directions for how we come to understand the self through knowing thyself and knowing thy existence in relation to the self, and recognition of it in others as sacred, and appreciating not just existence but an individual's own physical health and psychological health that we ultimately come to learn of through individuating ourselves and understanding our relation to others through primarily our differences and also our individual strengths, that without we would really fail to appreciate any sort of sense of purpose or meaningfulness in life. And it's through these individual differences of which we come to universal understandings of our human condition and situatedness, but more importantly, our direct embeddedness with our direct concerns that pertain to right now or what's coming up next, and what we need to do or what we should do or what we want to do or what we're currently doing, because maybe we're not really doing anything, and that's okay, but there's a concern there, you know, and that is, well, should I be doing something? And if there's no concern, then that's a pleasant moment, and that's worth satiating and experiencing and really savoring. And that's what I want to leave you off with for this video. There's going to be more coming up next. I hope you enjoy it. Bye.